Hello everyone, Burb here. Today I'll be talking about late surges in the Leo Cup. This is Champions Meeting 16, also known as the Sprint CM. The 7.1 patch changed almost everything we were doing with this Champions Meeting, which required me to redo all my CM guides before I actually ended up releasing the original late surger guide. So we'll be talking about them from scratch. Also, this builds off of the Leo Cup overview. If you are new and want a more broad overview of the Nakayama 1200 track as well, that is available to you in the top right corner. Today we'll be talking about specifically late surger, skills cards, and characters and why and when they work. So with that out of the way, let's begin and talk about late surgers. Are late surgers good? I think they're relatively slept on. Now, notably, I am a late surger player. I enjoy the role quite greatly, but what I have seen is in my rune match testing and from anecdotally from other people I've talked about, they have a good chance of winning. Their win rate has been slowly increasing as the people have figured out this new Unity Cup 2.0, and I think that's akin to two major changes that the 7.1 patch did. First of all, on your left is now half of the actual proc timing, which means it is much, much more consistent, and it is fourth or worse instead of sixth or worse. With the current pace chaser meta, most everyone will be in front of you in the mid race, which means on your left has a near guaranteed proc at a very good timing. The same thing has happened to Fast and Furious, which is their standard, easily acquired mid-race gold skill. And this means that they just have an additional mid-race option available to him, which is just free lengths. And this was not really as impactful before because it was sixth or worse, but now it is fourth or worse. Those two things, I think, have made it so that their win rate has, I think, probably doubled in the past week or so as Unity Cup 2.0 has existed. Also, the fact that we can overcap speed and power has made it so there is a lot more variance in just roles in general. So if you are good at building, you can make more things work because we're not capped by stats as much. The negatives for late surgers, of course, is they are behind the pace chasers, and there are a lot of them. Many things can happen that are bad with that. There's no real PDM breakers this time because the track is much too short for Umamusume. You do have downhill speedster, but that is very hard to acquire, as well as a gamble at best. And there's probably better things for you to look for. The short final straight makes it so that your innate late surger coefficient is not the absolute best, but it still matters because now that everyone is hitting acceleration, late race speed in general is quite important. Other than that, the only real issue that I find for building these late surgers is that there just isn't a lot of characters that have that sprint and late surger aptitude, which we'll get to in the character section. The stat requirements aren't any different from pretty much any other role this time. Your wit, you probably want 1100, 1200 power, 1300 speed. Try to max it as best you can. You don't need exactly this, but try to get as close as possible or above these requirements. Stamina doesn't really matter in this sprint CM. You most likely will grab it even in Unity Cup. It's like 300 is the requirement. If you're running Guts build, just know that you do not want to sacrifice any power really, and you don't want to sacrifice much wit at all because those are quite powerful stats and Guts is kind of secondary. Other than that, we'll get right into the skills. For primary accelerations, on your left has become ridiculously reliable now. At worst, it is a 0.2 excel equivalent of Nishino Flower, basically, and at best, it is 2.94 lengths, which is basically the entirety of the 0.4 excel that Pace Chasers grab. So you, at best proc, are basically on level with Pace Chasers at that point, and you're just faster. Other than that, you have Let's Pump Some Iron for sniping 6th position, and with a newly acquired 7.1 patch adding additional skills, if you're able to grab it, Leap Forward is going to be a near perfect proc. Don't let the graph actually dissuade you from it. Basically, it's the is overtake condition. If you proc any form of excel or speed carryover, you most likely will be in the is overtake projected to pass situation, which should trigger the game to proc the skill near instantly. This is why when Daiti Ruby is released later into Grand Live, it is quite a powerful card because in sprints and miles, for backliners in general, this is a very powerful skill. However, you can only get this from parents, so if you're not into the whole big parent building thing, it's going to be very difficult to get this skill on your character. But there's some parents floating around for sure that have this for it. Overall, when you're trying to find how much excel you really need, I'd say through skills, 0.6 is generally where the sweet spot is. So getting something like on your left plus one other primary excel or a slew of secondary excels that we'll talk about, or getting like Pump Iron into a combo with Pump Iron and Slick Surge is kind of generally what you're looking for. For the other supplementaries, for secondaries, Turbo Sprint is actually a good shout as well in sprinting gear. It has basically half the effectiveness as on your left, not because it's any worse. Its high rolls are still high, and in fact are higher with 0.18 lengths because of its increased duration. However, because it is basically twice the duration, it's going to hit half the occurrences. So it's basically that high roll option where you have double the effectiveness, half the occurrences, but your highs are higher, which means that you will most likely win when you perfect proc this Turbo Sprint, making it a very powerful card in Sakura Bakashino speed. I almost said guts, man. Otherwise, Nimble Navigator, you can grab the white from this scenario. It is not really proccing very often in my test, maybe 1 out of every 5 times, because I end up wide swinging quite a lot personally, and you are usually too far away from other people to actually proc this consistently. Otherwise, Ignite Spirit Power and Ignite Spirit Guts are both given by the Alharu scenario or the Unity Cup scenario. They are secondary. They're basically a Slick Surge, but with full timing rather than the buffed timing that Slick Surge has. And I Never Goof Up or Shooting Star, they're all both kind of parents, like hybrid acceleration speeds that are slightly weaker than the rest of the pack, but still have some general use, especially Special Week, because at worst she still is a velocity, late race velocity skill. There's a lot of gamble accelerations that late surge have access to. The bearing for being a acceleration you're wanting to take is a lot higher now because on your left and Slick Surge got buffed, which is really, really good on the sprint track. So you can corner con, although again, it's still a 1 out of 5 and you possibly have better options. Gap Closer, Blinding Flash, and Dauntless are 2 weird skills because Blinding Flash and Gap Closer can be used in acceleration if it procs early, and even if it decides to proc a little bit late in the timing, it's still a late race speed skill. So it is technically slightly inefficient because of its shorter duration for speed, but with the high roll potential, it's kind of just barely outside the realm of secondary excel. But if you are playing King Halo or you're running the King Halo power card because you own it, or you just want Umastand and stuff like that for, converting a parent into an ace later, it's actually not the worst thing in the world as I found, just mathematically speaking. But it certainly is slightly worse than the secondary and primary excel options. The same thing with Dauntless. It basically is a weaker version of Glittering Star because it does not have any of the recovery, and it's slightly shorter duration if I recall. With the high roll potential of 2.14 lengths, though, 1 out of every 6 times you will hit the perfect proc excel, and at worst it is just a slightly inefficient late race gold skill, so if you get enough hints on it, it's usually perfectly fine. Otherwise, the ones that you probably aren't taking now are Ladder Trace and Cheer because it's a late proc on the straight, and now we have better options to proc on the corner. Keep It Real and Flowers, the dancing in the leaves, both are a little bit tough for different reasons. They're just very finicky in their conditions. Is Overtake will usually proc early, and Blockside Continual Time, being a winning ticket player myself, will probably not proc at all. Red Hot Discipline, which is Bamboo Memory's ultimate, because you have to pass people, most likely it'll proc later on because you have to complete a singular pass and a next pass and a next pass and a next pass to become actually at the level of the secondary and primary accelerations. Most likely you'll be far enough into the late race where you will not need that acceleration anymore, so it is not necessarily very efficient at all. Racing Spirit Guts, you can only duel on the straight, which means best timing proc is going to be on the straight at the same timing as Ladder Trace and Cheer, which is both inefficient as soon as you proc any other excels, because you will be procking some level of Slick Surge or Pump Iron in order to actually be in a position where you need to be winning. You can technically grab Taiki Ult or Nishino Flower Ultimate because 3rd through 4th is an overshoot acceleration, which is in a position where you are winning because if you push forward into the pack, you are in a better position than when you are sitting in the back. However, Taiki Ultimate in particular does not allow you to proc it in the late race, so it is very, very unlikely to actually proc, given that there is an average of about 5.5 pace chasers at the moment per lobby. most likely 4th place is not going to be immediately available to you unless you really high roll wit checks plus your mid race. The one that I may suggest if you are looking to grab one of these is Nishino Flower's Budding Blossom, because you can still late proc this, which means there is still a combo that you can have where you go and hit Pump Iron into some sort of passing acceleration ultimate into Nishino Flower ultimate. And you may not need all 3 of these. People are finding that you can just do combo of like Mayano Top Gun ultimate with just Pump Iron Snipe 6, and that is 0.4, and that's all you need. Or you can just do 6th through 4th and hope you're on your left procs early as well. But this is not the most efficient thing to do, but it is an option available to you as well. For your early race, unlike the Pace Chasers, Fighter does not actually reliably proc on time, and it's after 5 seconds, which means that it is usually after the initial target speed increase from 0 from the gate till your first early race speed. So it's not really that great of a skill to have on these shorter tracks. Groundwork does work if you get groundwork plus 3 greens. Downhill Speedster is technically a 1 in 3 PDM break, but it's very, very difficult to actually grab this, and most likely you're sacrificing other things on your parents. Otherwise, Umastand, despite not being a PDM break, is still a good skill because it is efficient, and there are very few things that can proc in this early race zone because it is neither a corner nor a straight. Credit to, I forget what that commenter who said that, but after testing it, yes, there's very few skills in here that can combat an Umastand, so you'll be most likely in front of the other late surgers if there are anybody else running the late surgers in that early race. Otherwise, your mid-race velocity skills, after just putting them all on the screen, I noticed that, hey, late surges have a ton of these now. Nothing ventured, of course, on the new Nakayama Festa Wit card if you're interested. You don't really care about the stamina drain if it decides to stamina drain you. It is basically a high roll option. You're basically trying to speed carry over that 0.45. Professor of Curvature on Kitasun is great. Fast and Furious on the Marvy Power card is great as well. It is just mid-race velocity that will almost guaranteed proc with the current meta. Rising Dragon is the technical highest chance of speed carryover. It is a very powerful skill, but you do need to prime this, as I was talking about before. You need to proc a skill that's going to allow you to start a pass before that final corner actually starts. Otherwise, you're going to wide swing yourself and probably not complete that pass. Late Surger Corners also works as mid-race because all the corners are within that mid-race. There is technically a dead zone for all of these corner skills, just to note. Same thing happens with Rising Dragon, but the difference between this and Speedstar is that most likely you, hopefully, in the situations where you're winning, are going to pass somebody before the late race actually begins, because then you will hit that speed carryover, whereas Speedstar is just a purely random point. The other big one that people forget about is Full Throttle. Now, Full Throttle is a late surger skill that is just a 0.25 with a stamina drain. Because we don't really care about stamina, it is technically about 100 stamina. It's about 75 on sprints. It's really not, I mean, you just take this. Like, this is the easiest take skill in the game, and this increases the value of Throne because you now get a 0.25 skill to start sinking some of those skill points that she gives you. Now that Throne is basically buffed, now that they fixed the card, it's a card you must likely be getting. You can keep going, but that is only on a stamina card in Ines Fusion Stamina, so it's going to be very difficult for you to grab that. I'm going to grab a drink real quick. So, in High Spirits, on the Bakushin card, you can technically grab this, but again, a lot of pace chasers in lobbies. If there's too many pace chasers, you are never hitting, front half of the pack. And because this is a random point, you can just choose early and you're not going to grab it. It's not really that efficient, in my opinion. I don't think you'll be taking either Light as a Feather or in High Spirits in this case, in my opinion. Note that both the racing speeds technically are slightly, the various amount of slightly less efficient than the other skills. I would probably not take Burning Spirit Speed unless you run out of other white skills on this list that are better in the mid-race, because Burning Spirit Speed has a shorter duration, which means it has a shorter chance of speed to carry over, and more importantly, less effectiveness for how expensive it is, because it is, I think, base 400 skill points. Racing Spirit Speed at least has a greater chance of speed carryover despite being the shorter duration. Remember the pass combos. This is what I was talking about before in the priming. You need to basically proc a skill to hopefully complete your pass before that final corner truly begins, so you don't actually wide swing yourself to the final lane. A lot of this is just going to be, again, Professor of Curvature procking at the right time, or grabbing any other mid-race speed skill and having it proc properly, but technically Slipstream does help with this as well, to proc your Itson into your PTO, your playtime's over, or any various different passing combo skills. I think Ravissant may be front half of the pack, so that may be a little bit more tough than the other ones. Tail Health High also works as well. I forgot about that. You have access to a ton of late race velo, as you can see. You might want to pause here and see some of it, but Homestretch Haste and Body and Mind's a great one. Firm Course Menace is actual speed and power, which means that it is simply just bonus lengths gained in the late race. Racing Spirit Power is very powerful. Racing Spirit Stamina is also very powerful. If you are a parent builder and trying to get those on parents, you can use them in this CM because they both are just above average late race speed skills. Otherwise, you have a ton of ultimates like Oguri Cap, like Symboli Rudolph ultimate, or Shooting Star is now current speed, which means it is acceleration plus current speed at the beginning and still is a speed skill at the if it decides to proc late as well. But most likely you will be passing somebody because you are hitting your acceleration early. King Halo may be a free-to-play option because despite it having much worse conditions than Oguri Cap, it still is a 0.25 when inherited because it just requires 4 through 6, as well as not being rushed, which is a lot worse. Otherwise, there's a couple of other things. Your straight skills are going to be late race. 1.5 mil CC happens very late into the race itself, but you should still get some value from it because of its shorter duration. Note that Pedal to the Metal, from what I've seen in simulation, it should on first proc just get completely eaten. So be careful with the skill. Even at 0.6 XL, which is what is on screen, it still gets eaten by the acceleration zone. Someone else could test this and tell me, but as far as I can see, the simulation does not like this skill at all. For cards, the biggest card that's been updated is Throne. They fixed the card, basically. If you were not really feeling the power of Throne, try it again, because now, whenever you have events, you have a good chance of actually going and getting the Pure Passion effect. Now, this didn't seem like a lot before, but it turns out when you press the card, you basically have a 50-50 chance of proccing that event that gives you +4 speed, +4 wit, or +4 skill points, and that has the same trigger chance as any other different Pure Passion, like for any other different event that it has. And so I found that like you get like 2 or 3 more times with Pure Passion for like another 9 turns, and that's kind of ridiculous, honestly. That's a ton more stats this card is now giving you. Also know that it gives you Full Throttle as well, which is a quite good mid-race skill. That is a 0.25, which is better than a standard 0.15 inherit, or 0.15 regular speed skill. Otherwise, your speeds cards haven't really changed that much. Note that I didn't put it here, but Dauntless is on the Seeking the Pearl speed card. It is rather good. There is a couple other late surger skills. I'm sorry I didn't update this properly. Biko Pegasus is fine for stats, as well as Summer Marzensky and Fukutitaru, because at least Matekane Fukutitaru gives you some late surger corners, and Marzensky has a hint for groundwork. Bakashino is going to be rather powerful because of Turbo Sprint, and gives you access to sprint straights and sprint corners and a few other supplementary skills. Firm Force Madness can still be found on Narita Top Road, although you don't get the full trainingness effectiveness. If you're running Crown Route, you actually get at least a decent amount of actual fans. And of course, Kidison Black gives you Professor Curvature and Straightaway Adept. For SR cards, I still think the best ones probably are Sweep Tosho Speed for the actual SP bonus, and you get Lone Wolf and Slipstream. Slipstream's a hint for sure. Asian Flash is a good shout as well, because if you're looking for laser straights or corners, you get those on hints, which means you can get those on the blue bubbles as well. Otherwise, Current Chance Speed can give you some sprint skills, and King Halo does give you actually a few skills as well, with some decent stat output as well. Shinka Wendy's just there because her trainings are still one of the best, if not the best in the game. This is basically an SSR card in terms of output. For power, the only really power additions that are there for the skills is Bamboo Memory Power, which is a flip for Rising Dragon. Rising Dragon is powerful, but you probably don't seek out this card in particular. Otherwise, it gives you Homestretch Haste, bunch of sprint skills, as well as Laser Straights, Outer Swell as well. Yaina Muteki, although its on is given by the actual scenario, remember you can still kill the chain for playtime's over, as well as giving you a ton of 5 hint pluses for Tail Health High, Ramp Up, Homestretch Haste, and Prepared to Pass, meaning a blue explosion is going to give you 5 hints for that as well. Groundwork can be also found on the Smart Falcon power card. For power SRs, the best one is the Marvy event card for power. If you have a high LB version of this, it's very good. Ramp up, tail held high in the actual hints, as well as a fast and furious Agima-sen for the skill itself, which is rather powerful on late surgers. Otherwise, you have the Bakushino card for a bunch of sprint skills, or you can just run the race bonus of flower power. Or, as I've been told, the Kawakami Princess event card's actually not bad as well, although after looking at it, it's really only for specifically power generation. It does have 35% friendship bonus as well as 2 power bonus, which should give you a ton of power if you're just trying to run a Speedwick deck with a supplementary card. Agnes Digiton is just kind of a fun card because it does give you the SP bonus, but it has no specialty priority as well. So it's a little bit of a high risk, high reward, but the SP bonus is actually quite nice. For Guts cards, I don't see a reason to actually run Guts. Like I said, in High Spirits is not necessarily the thing that you want on a late surger, although Bakushino does give you a ton of actual useful sprint hints. Otherwise, you're probably just running the trio of Ayabe, the Yukino Vision event Guts card, and Haru Urara. For Wit cards, the big one is going to be Nice Nature Wit, and this is almost borrowable. Overthrown, even with a Throne buff, it's hard to recommend a borrow after Throne is so powerful. But if you're looking for On Your Left, man, On Your Left is such a powerful skill. You can get away with Slick Surge plus once a supplementary, but it is a win condition on its own. Otherwise, you just run your strongest Wit cards because you're trying to get your Wit as high as possible. Notably, Nothing Ventured is on the Nakayama Festa card, and Current-chan Wit does have PTO for killing the chain off, as well as a couple of sprint skills that may be useful for you. Right-handed can be found on the Fine Motion card. However, it can also be found on probably the strongest Wit card for free-to-play players in the game right now, which is Machihane Fukuhitaru Wit, which not only gives you a hint for late surger corners possibly, but right-handed guaranteed if it finishes its chain, which is also scenario linked, which has great Wit output on its own with a high initial friendship gauge. This card is almost comparable to close to a SSR Wit card with the scenario link actually added with it. Otherwise, you do have options like Marvelous Sunday Wit if you're not running the power card for hints for ramp up and tail held high. And another commenter noted that Ines Fujin doesn't actually look that bad, and it doesn't look that bad. She has hints for Slipstream and PTO. It is just another Wit card if you need a one to fill out your deck. Otherwise, the Rice Shower card, Wit card does have a scenario link bonus attached to it, or you can run Agnes Tachyon, which does have Savvy, which is not too impactful right now, but does have an SP bonus, and Daiwa Scarlet Wit does have good Wit trainings. For an example build, let's build a King Halo real quick. You have all the skills that King Halo has, which we'll go over later in the character section, but Blinding Flash, Outer Post Proficiency, Outer Swell, and of course her ultimate Prideful King. For this build, we'll do a free-to-play build. So let's say you have one SSR card. In this case, we'll say Kidison Black, but whatever SSR card that you have, go right ahead. Professive Curvature, Straightaway Depth added to the kit, and then Asian Flash will give us late surger corners and straights, hopefully on at least a blue explosion for one of these. Otherwise, we do Fuku for right-handed and late surger corners, and Agnes Tachyon can be just there as an additional Wit card to give us some more SP. We had the Marvy event card for Tail Held High and Fast and Furious. Hopefully we win that Agima-sen. If we don't, it will become Position Pilfer. And then finally, we borrow On Your Left. We borrow Nice Nature Wit for On Your Left. And as you can see, we already have a ton of skills before even our parents gives us any skills whatsoever, or the scenario itself gives us any skills. We can also add its On and Ignited Spirit Power from this, and if we really need to, we can add like Ignited Spirit Speed or Burning Spirit Speed, because most likely that will be what the game gives us. And we have a ton of methods to actually saturate our skill points. And this is what I was saying, is that even in this build, you may be tempted, and I think it's a great idea, that you may not need full On Your Left, because you see you have a lot of other methods of acceleration. So maybe you bump that to Slick Surge, and hopefully you just try to get that through, let's say, Measuro Dober for Slick Surge. I didn't mention Measuro Dober Wit, but it doesn't have any SP specialty priority, but it does give Slick Surge, or you just hope that you get it from your parents because you have a good parent with it. And then you borrow Throne, which gives you Full Throttle, which gives you an additional skill to do it. You bump that down to Slick Surge, and you now have like 200 to 300 more skill points, probably more than that now that the actual card is completely fixed as well. And this is a rather powerful way of basically having a ton of skills without even having to tap into your parents. This is why I am like kind of suspicious about the whole we have to borrow Bakushin Guts because we don't have enough skills to buy. Because when I'm going through this on a character like King Halo, I just see like probably close to 2,500 skill points right here, plus what my parents are going to give me, right? That's just my personal opinion on the matter. For characters, I'll be going over the AA aptitudes first, which are just characters that have Turf A, Sprint A, and Late Surger A. And then I'll get into some of the strong characters that do require a bit of work, okay? So to start, Bamboo Memory was just released. I do have a guide on her. There's some CM16 stuff in there as well, but basically Red Hot Discipline serves as a secondary excel for you because it is stronger than the Inherit. It's actually quite good. You proc either on your left or some level of instant proc excels or some speed carryover skills, and you will pass somebody who hasn't hit those, and that causes Red Hot Discipline to not only give you the original acceleration, but because you pass it, it will extend the duration and increase the effect, and that kind of cascades into more passes, which cascades into more acceleration, and this character basically has enough acceleration built in with just speed carryover skills and just one or two accelerations. She also comes with sprint straights and sprint corners, which are two of the hardest skills, honestly, to grab. You kind of have to grab them from parents or a Bakushin card, and comes with 10% speed and 10% power and 10% guts. You can guts build her, but I don't find it necessary. Most likely you will be probably just speed witting with her because 10 speed, 10 power is quite good when you're pressing the speed button. Otherwise, very strong character. If you have her on your account, this is kind of the time to run her because she's kind of purpose built for this champions meeting. King Halo Cheerleader. The Cheerleader version, unfortunately, ladder trace and cheer is a little bit late. While it is a backup acceleration, if you don't hit anything, you will get quite a lot of value from ladder trace and cheer. I think you need to hit a little more quickly in order to actually go and win the race. So she does come with Rising Dragon, which is a really good final corner skill with late surge straights and the white version of Blinding Flash Gap Closer, and does have 10 speed, 10 power, 10 guts like Bamboo Memory, but the ultimate, if you do hit your 0.6, you're not going to find really much value, which means that I think that you should be running base King Halo this time. I know a lot of people don't like her ultimate. They say it never procs, but I'm finding in these room matches, there's usually about 3 or 4 Umas that are like within a length in the front when they're actually like fighting in the last 200 meters. So being in 4th through 6th position actually is not that bad. And people forget this is still a Triumphant Pulse. It's a 0.455 seconds. So it's put you on par with Ogre Cap, which is most likely in the pace chaser position, which means you are faster. And so if there's a bunch of cluster in the front, you have Prideful King, which is basically full-on Triumphant Pulse, and you can inherit Triumphant Pulse, and you are just faster than everybody. That's kind of your game plan. The 20% power is going to really help you. You can just speed with it because 20% power will go and boost your power, like your power stats so much just with a bunch of speed cards. And Blinding Flash, like I said, is just basically a late race speed skill with upside. It is technically, 70% as efficient as a speed skill at worst, but if it does decide to proc early, it does give you that bonus extra acceleration. So if you enjoy King Halo, I think the base is better. You also come with Outer Post Proficiency, which is of course the best skill in the game. If you are new here, that is a joke, but just hit Outer Post. Easy, right? Otherwise, Outer Swollen Kit is just going to help you a little bit in the mid-race. Nishino Flower technically is an A late surger. I think in the current pace chaser meta, there's just way too many pace chasers to ever hit 4th place or 3rd place. I don't think there's much value in pulling her back into the late surger position. I think she's much better in the pace chaser position, in my personal opinion. Although technically you can build her the same way as any other late surger, but I don't find it necessary. For strong characters, there's a few characters that are rather good that just require a lot of work. The biggest one being Ogre Cap. Ogre Cap is one of the best pace chasers. She's also probably one of the best late surgers because Triumphant Pulse is that good of a skill. Sprint E means you need 4 parents to get to Sprint A. 20% speed, 10% power means that you are very, very strong in the current speed power width, or even if you wish to do guts, go right ahead, but doesn't give you anything really in kit. Nimble Navigator is not as important because you have no stopping me from the scenario itself. But Triumphant Pulse, do not underestimate this. She is a clean slate that if you get the skills on her, she is an absolute menace on this track. Surprisingly enough, one of the most fun characters right now is my Top Gun Wedding. this character is incredibly powerful. Now, incredibly difficult to build with the Sprint D, late B, but the increased speed along with her position, and also because currently we're having 5 pace chasers per lobbies, and we're probably going to see close to 4 when the CM releases. Flowery Maneuver is going to proc as alt effect more often than not. If it doesn't proc its alt effect, it procs a speed ultimate that is most likely speed carryover because you're already in the front half of the pack as a late surger. That's usually good as well. In the alt effect, if you're able to prime your pass and get a pass off close to that late race, or you hit your acceleration because now it's final corner or later. So if you don't pass anybody in that final corner, you can now just proc on your left and then pass somebody. You have an additional 0.4 acceleration from the back half, to be fair, but now you have 0.8 acceleration, which is quite good. The big thing that's pushing this character up is Maya's Love Advice is now enabled again. I did forget to mention this because I forgot about it, but Maya's Love Advice, if you have 500 more wit when this event decides to proc, and it most likely will proc at some point, you just get Fast Learner, which is just a 10% discount, so you just have so many more skills than everybody else, as long as you're able to actually saturate them with good skills that are applicable. Remember that Chameleon is also enabled on her, so if you go and you run with one of each style in your career, you do get Slick Surge as well for the late surger position, along with all your excels for the other ones if you are building in a different position. Otherwise, 10 speed, 10 wit's going to help you out a lot. This character is completely slept on, but again, very difficult to build with these particular aptitudes. You have to have a late to get that late to A, as well as get enough at CBA. That's 3 parents worth for sprint to hopefully hit that sprint S as well. Measure Orion is difficult to build. King Halo is probably easier to build and probably a little bit stronger in my personal opinion. But if you do snipe 6th place, this is one of those characters that is just you hit 6th, you win game because you now have 0.4 acceleration. It is a little bit of a lobby gamble because if there's just too many pace chasers, you're just kind of blocked out. But if you hit that 6th place, you can kind of combine it with any of the passing ultimates that have excel, or you can just do on your left. That's perfectly fine as well, or Slick Surge. You do get Slick Surge if you win the Triple Crown, which is a lot harder to do than you think because Measure Orion Ultimate does not work very well in career. But that 20% power bonus and 10% wit bonus is probably one of the, if not the best stat bonuses in the game for a speed power wit deck, because your speed and wit, you can just run speed and wit and you're going to get the power in the sprint tracks, and the wit's also amplified. So you could almost try 3 speed on this character, and I think you're going to find you get a good amount of wit anyways. But there's a lot of things you can do with this character. 3 speed, 2 wit, 3 wit, 2 speed, 2 throne with a power card. A lot of things you can do to try with this, and it's free to play. The only problem is, of course, Sprint E, which requires 4 parents to get up to Sprint A. Agnes Digital is a force, but this character is really powerful, and the reason is it's Super Stand instead of Umastand. It's stronger than Umastand if you get a somewhat decent gate and you proc Super Stand, because there's other late surgers. You're just the front late surger because there's literally no other skills that can really proc in that initial non-straight or corner. So Super Stand is going to make it so that you're in front of the late surger pack, which means your mid-race just kind of procs without being blocked or triggering any form of overtake at the moment, which means that your overtake is more going to be for on that final corner, which can basically make it so that you can speed carry over somewhat easier than the rest of the pack. It's all RNG, I know. OMG, the final sprint most likely will slightly late proc because you do have to pass 2 people, so you will at least get some value from the ultimate. Even if you don't, you do get some lane movement speed to make sure you're not blocked. And of course, you just have the weirdest stat bonuses in the game at 8 speed, 7 stam, 7 power, and 8 wit. Special Week is incredibly powerful. Now, she is a force because she is Sprint F, which means you need a lot of sprint stuff and a double Pink Spark proc or a 3-star Pink Spark to double proc. And the 20% stamina bonus is not doing you any favors as well. Very, very difficult. However, with the change to Shooting Star, it is now current speed, which means that her ultimate always gets value, which is very powerful. You're inheriting this possibly on other characters, and she has a stronger version of it. It is 0.1 acceleration, which means it is a supplementary acceleration, and whenever it decides to proc, which will most likely proc pretty quickly because you are also hitting other accelerations to pass people, you get a immediate increase in speed at current speed, does not matter in Excel zone or not, as well as regular 0.1 acceleration to add to your other accelerations you're doing. In Body and Mind, which is Homestretch Haste Gold in Kit, as well as Slick Surge and Corner Adept. not going to talk about the natural pace chasers. If you have to do some work on the aptitude of late surgers, you kind of know what you're doing. Note that Fujikaseki kind of works in the late surger position. Of course, Bono kind of works in the late surger position as well. I would not do things like Taiki Shuttle in it. I don't think it's worth it. I think this will be a CM where you want to just make it as easy as possible. I would say keep them in the pace chaser positions as well and choose one of the late surger natural late surgers to actually run in the position. There's some more characters that just have really, really tough aptitudes that are still fine if you're able to build it. It's just going to require you a little more effort. So if you're more of an Oshi player for these ones, you're going to have to take a little time making some parents for it, but they should be fine. Air Group Wedding, still very powerful with Eternal Moments, does proc at the 50% mark because his overtake should proc pretty early. And this would cause you to prime that pass for that final corner. Corner connoisseur people are usually skipping, but if you have extra skill points, go right ahead. It still will help you out 1 out of every 5 times, and it is very powerful if it decides to perfect proc. Ramp Up and Home Stretch Hasting Kit as well. Regular Air Groove, Blazing Pride is a final corner pass, so it's basically the opposite. Instead of the primer, it is the effect. If you proc this, you most likely are speed carryovering with it, and 10% speed, 20% power is really powerful, although I believe she has C, if I remember, C Sprint as well, which does require a little bit more than normal to grab. So you need multiple parents for it, but again, you probably will be borrowing a Sprint parent that gives you a good amount of Sprint Sparks as well. Kawakami Princess, Sprint D, 10% power, 20% guts. Unfortunately, the value of this character was the no stopping me. Now, she still is very good. And Princess must seize victory. Engaging in a challenge, which is a block side continue time on the final straight, should late proc, which means it's a little bit safer than just a straight final straight, like getting eaten completely by the Excel Zone. And people do still forget that this character does have Rising Dragon and a bunch of late surger skills with late surger straights and home stretch haste. It's kind of unfortunate that no stopping me is given by the scenario. That will go away in Grand Live, but still perfectly viable if you are a Kawakami Princess fan. Although the Sprint D means you do need some Sprint parents. Dober alts, both of them do not work. The track is too short for camping Dober, and Measure Dober regular. Unfortunately, the final corner is in the mid-race, so her alt will proc too early to get any value from it. Symbole Rudolph is Sprint E, which requires 4 parents. Behold Thine Emperor's Divine Might is an incredibly powerful skill. The only problem with it is that you have 20% stamina and 10% guts. Professor of Curvature is in the kit, which means you can go and run any other card if you really wish to, but now that you don't care too much about race bonus, Citizen Black is probably one of the better speed cards that are available to us in the game. But Symbole Rudolph, if you're able to use this blank slate and put on all the skills, she is ridiculously powerful because you basically have one of the best late race speed skills in the game. Symbole Rudolph Autumn doesn't give you anything, and her ultimate now is forced to be late race, and it's kind of tough, but you have to be pressured, and there is I think a 2-second overtake time or something, or a 2-second pressure time, which means technically this can slightly late proc, so at least there's some hope there, but this is just a really tough character on shorts now that they made it so it doesn't proc in the mid-race now. So you used to be able to speed carry over on this character, and now you can't, which makes this a little bit more tough. All right, those are the characters. Here's your checklist. The stats are on the screen right now. 13 speed, 1200 power, 1100 wit is my personal suggestion. If you don't get exactly that, that's perfectly fine. There's some value in increasing those stats. There's some value in sacrificing things for other stats, but I'm sure I've given my suggestions on the matter. Otherwise, try to get your primary acceleration on your left is incredibly powerful. If you're not going or you don't own Nice Nature Wit, which by the way, a 1LB copy is perfectly fine now that we don't really care too much about the race bonus. It's definitely not as good, but it is passable and serviceable for the skill on your left. I forgot to mention that. Slick Surge, otherwise, it's perfectly fine to have Slick Surge as well. Ignited Spirit Power, Ignited Spirit Guts, Let's Pump Smire, Turbo Sprint, or Sprinting Gear, along with all the other ones I mentioned. Your goal is to hit 0.6. So I think you maybe need 3 of these, or you could just go on your left +2, or you could try like Ig Power plus that. You know the deal with that. So you're gambling. You need to hit roughly 0.6 to be viable, and then from there you go and you grab your mid-race and your late-race speed skills, which are very good. Ogre Cap Ultimate is one of the best inherits in the game. that should get you through most of it as well. Otherwise, I still think Sprint S is better than Turf S personally. I think your late race is really important now that everyone is hitting accelerations, and after that, try to get more mid race and more late race skills. And of course, speed is better than power, which is equal to wit, which is better than guts in my personal opinion. Okay, so that has been the late surger guide. Front runners and end closer players, don't worry, I'm trying to get yours out as soon as possible. The 7.1 patch kind of messed everything up. I have to essentially build 6 complete new guides is what I did, and I'm now through 3 of them, so it will be quicker now that I am slowly understanding this scenario more. So I hope you have enjoyed this. I will probably honestly do the end closer one pretty quickly because there is a lot of overlap, and then front runners you shouldn't be too far behind. I think at worst it will be this weekend, but it probably will be quicker. All that's left is to thank the members. Again, memberships are appreciated but never required. But for those who do support me a little bit more on this channel, I do appreciate you as well. Thank you all for watching. But for those in the Borb tier, which is the $5 tier, I do thank them at the end of the overview video. And because there is enough that I can handle it, I have been shouting them out at the end of each of the CM guides. So thank you in particular to Kikuzi IRL, Immobility, Mr. Merritt 1, Crest of Gautier, Lucifel 91, Oguri Cap Pizza Burger, Peter Van San, Oscar Van Bruce, Misha, Sage, CD Ogren, Sorcerer, Elise Bright, Trevor Overtone, Dalagante, Etap Pete, Astrosarian, Eva Delta, Tokai Teo Monarch, Scraps, It's Bella Knox, Curalicious, Galsber, Aoi Tori, Boss Corgi, Zinny TF, Dark Wabbits, Brandy, Boffin, Tony Lim, Dialectical, Sleepy Bat, and Pavi. Thank you all. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate your time. I hope you've gotten something from this. I'll start working on the other 2 roles. Do not worry. Take care, everyone. Good luck. Burb out.